I invited my family to my wedding but no one showed up. When I called my sister she laughed coldly. Oh, was that today? You'll be divorced soon anyway, so it's a waste of time. My mom sighed over the phone. I'm in Paris right now, enjoying champagne with a view of the Eiffel Tower. Don't bother me with this nonsense. But when they returned home I was the one smiling. I invited my family to my wedding but no one showed up. When I called my sister, her cold laugh cut through the line. Oh, was that today? You'll be divorced soon anyway, what a waste of time. My mom sighed over the phone. I'm in Paris right now, sipping champagne with a view of the Eiffel Tower. Don't bother me with this nonsense. Yet, when I returned home later I found myself smiling. For most people slogging through Monday mornings in San Francisco's financial district, the start of the week was grim. But not for Alyssa Johnson. She had vowed to stride into each morning with her head held high, provided no extra worry lines marred her forehead. As she studied her reflection on her computer screen, she took a deep breath. Today was special. The engagement ring from James, her boyfriend of 3 years, glittered on her left hand. Across town, Melissa dialed her mother's number with a mix of excitement and dread. Mom, I have something important to tell you. Her mother, Barbara, always spoke in a hushed tone, as if fearing eavesdroppers. I'm busy right now, swamped with plans for Victoria Hilton's garden party. You know, Victoria's considered the most influential woman in town. Melissa closed her eyes briefly. She'd heard that line enough times to know it was more about Barbara's wishful social status than any real power. I understand, Mom, but I got engaged to James. There was a long pause, then a cold, mocking laugh. Oh, dear real estate agent Melissa, you always settle for less. Look at Vanessa, dating a lawyer, a promising one at that. Melissa's gaze fell to the little succulent on her desk, the first gift James had given her. James is a good man. I believe I can be happy with him. Barbara, happiness is fleeting, her mother sneered. I never expected you to disappoint the family so badly, but it's your choice. After hanging up, a tight knot formed in Melissa's chest. Always criticized, always told she wasn't enough. Yet she still dared to choose a different life. That evening Melissa visited her sister Vanessa's upscale apartment. The panoramic view from the top floor was breathtaking. Yet Vanessa's frosty expression chilled the room. Engaged to him? Vanessa said, swirling her wine glass. You really have no ambition. Melissa sank onto the sofa, her eyes drifting over the shelf adorned with photos of her daughter, Sarah. I love James. Vanessa scoffed. Love is just brain chemistry, it fades away. She walked to the window and gestured at the Manhattan skyline. Look at this view, this is my love. This is what I've achieved. I'm happy. Turning back, Vanessa fixed Melissa with a sneer. You always cling to that word, happy. But face it, the man you've chosen will spend his life selling other people's houses. Softly, Melissa replied. But on the other hand, I know you're successful. We hear about it every day. Vanessa's smile faltered. I didn't mean to hurt you. I just think you deserve better. Before Melissa could show her the engagement ring, Vanessa brushed it off with a dismissive, show me later. Later, Melissa met her brother Brian at his surf shop. The warm San Diego sun highlighted his tan skin and free spirit, a stark contrast to her own heartache. Congratulations, Brian, he said, offering a brief, almost formal hug. Glancing toward the ocean, Melissa murmured. Do you ever feel like we're just making footprints in the sand? Brian shrugged. Isn't James enough? He loves you. Melissa's smile was bittersweet. I wish it were that simple. We Johnsons are expected to aim higher, even if it sounds like royalty. Her family was middle class, yet Barbara's lofty social dreams had seeped into everything they did. Especially now, as Melissa prepared for her wedding. Melissa had met James's parents, who welcomed her with genuine warmth. Especially his mother, Abigail, whose embrace felt far more sincere than anything Melissa had experienced from her own. I'm so glad you chose James, Abigail said softly. That night, alone in her hotel room, Melissa stared at her engagement ring until tears welled up. Why couldn't her family be happy for her? Why was every choice she made deemed insufficient? Yet meeting James's parents had lit a spark of hope. Perhaps on her wedding day, her family would finally open their hearts and understand what family truly meant. With that fragile hope, she carefully sealed 3 wedding invitations, one each for her mom, sister, and brother, each envelope holding her wish for a new start. On the morning of the ceremony, soft June sunlight streamed through the venue windows, casting enchanting lines of light over the empty family seats, marked on a tripod. Melissa, radiant yet visibly anxious in her elegant wedding gown, kept checking her watch. They should be here any minute, she whispered. Wedding planner Jessica entered. Melissa, the ceremony begins in 15 minutes. Are you ready? Melissa forced a smile. Yes, I'm fine. It's just my family hasn't shown up yet. Jessica nodded reassuringly. They might be stuck in traffic. They'll be here soon. Melissa clutched her smartphone, gazing out at the clear blue sky over San Francisco, and catching sight of the Golden Gate Bridge in the distance. Everything was perfect except for one thing. The door opened and James entered in a crisp white tuxedo, His eyes were filled with concern. Melissa, are you okay? He asked, gently placing his hand on her shoulder. I still haven't heard from anyone. They're not answering their calls, she replied, brushing her hair back with trembling fingers. James offered a comforting embrace, careful not to disturb her dress. There must be a reason. I'll try calling one more time. Melissa dialed Vanessa first. After 3 rings, Vanessa's voice came through, icy and dismissive. Where are you? The ceremony is about to start. Struggling to keep a cheerful tone, Melissa said. I called to confirm 3 weeks ago. Vanessa interrupted with a cold laugh. Oh, was that today? I sent you an invitation, didn't I? And besides, you'll be divorced soon, so why bother? Melissa's heart pounded as she tried to form a response, but Vanessa's words left her speechless. James squeezed her hand as she dialed her mother next. Barbara's phone rang 4 times before she answered, her tone as distant as ever. Oh, was that today? Melissa, I'm in Paris enjoying champagne and the Eiffel Tower. Don't waste my time with your trivial wedding drama. Melissa's voice cracked. Please, Mom. But Barbara's tone hardened. Grow up, Melissa. No one cares about your wedding, especially with that guy, James. Your marriage to him doesn't matter. Unable to endure any more, Melissa hung up, tears streaming down her face. With a final burst of hope, she called Brian. After 2 rings, he answered. Where are you? The ceremony's about to begin. I'm sorry, Brian, he replied with regret tinted by coldness. There's a surfing competition, and if Mom and Vanessa aren't going, I'm not coming either. The call ended and Melissa stood there, her wedding dress catching the morning light while her heart sank deeper into despair. James knelt beside her. Let's move forward without them. My family is your family now. Wiping her tears, she asked. Do you really believe that? Absolutely, he murmured, kissing her hand. Today marks a new beginning. Let's leave the past behind. The ceremony began as scheduled. Melissa walked down the aisle, escorted by James's father, and glanced over the gathered crowd. There were many familiar faces, friends, James's relatives, and a few of her own, but the seats meant for her family remained empty. After exchanging vows, James's father, Robert, a tall, dignified man, rose and announced, From today forward, Melissa, you are a cherished member of the Hamilton family. In our name, those who have hurt you will face consequences. Surprised, Melissa murmured. Hamilton family? Leaning close, James whispered. I didn't tell you. My father is the CEO of Hamilton Enterprises, one of America's leading companies. I'm even about to take on a major role in the business. Melissa gasped as connections formed in her mind. His mysterious long trips, his reserved demeanor, and his disinterest in her family's drama. Why didn't you tell me? She asked softly. I wanted to protect you, he replied quietly. I needed to be sure you loved me for who I am, not for my name or status. Then, his mother wrapped her arms around her. You have value, dear. Those who abandoned you will one day regret their choices. At the end of the ceremony, amid heartfelt applause and a shared kiss of commitment, Melissa declared with quiet determination, James, I'm so happy to have met you. Let's build our new life together. James smiled gently. Today I saw clearly what kind of people your family are. I won't let them hurt you ever again. In that moment, as tears mingled with laughter in his arms, Melissa whispered, This is the beginning of my new life, and the start of my quiet revenge. 6 months later, as I sat in my corner office atop Hamilton Tower, a symbol of all I had fought for, I finally felt free. The echoes of a painful past had faded, replaced by the promise of a future shaped entirely by my own choices. Melissa stared out at San Francisco's most stunning skyscrapers, the entire city sprawling beneath her. In just 6 months, everything had changed. Once a modest real estate employee, she was now the head of public relations at Hamilton Enterprises. Just then, a young assistant knocked and announced, We're ready for the interview. Taking a deep breath, Melissa checked her reflection in the glass. A silk blouse paired with a perfectly tailored skirt, her hair elegantly styled, and her jewelry understated yet refined. Smiling at her transformation, she murmured, Thank you, let's go. On the first floor of Hamilton Tower, a local news crew waited. As Melissa stepped out of the elevator, cameras turned toward her. With a confidence she never imagined possible, she approached the team. Thank you for having me, she said as a female reporter extended her hand, adding, For our community feature, we'd love to hear about Hamilton Enterprises' social contributions. Guided into a beautifully decorated lounge, the interview began. Mrs. Hamilton, as the face of the company, can you tell us about your community initiatives? The reporter asked. Melissa's serene smile deepened as she replied, I've been blessed with a wonderful husband and a new family. Life takes unexpected turns, and I'm especially grateful to those who taught me what true family means. Her smile held a quiet strength. At Hamilton Enterprises, we've launched a new family support program designed to help those hurt by emotional abuse or neglect. Family isn't just about blood. It's about the relationships where people genuinely respect and value one another. I experienced abandonment by my own family on my wedding day, but that pain has given me strength. Now I want to empower others who have faced similar heartbreak. For the next half hour, Melissa spoke calmly about the company's social projects and her personal journey. After the cameras stopped rolling, the reporter reached out. Thank you so much for sharing your story. It will inspire so many. Melissa took the reporter's hand. I'd be honored if it could help even one person. Back at the office, James was waiting. His proud smile lit up when he saw her. You were magnificent today, he said, kissing her. How was the interview? It went smoother than I expected, Melissa replied, smiling in his arms. James continued. How are the preparations for the social media campaign? Everything's set. We plan to launch tomorrow with photos from our wedding and messages about the bonds that truly make a family. Even including the fact that my family didn't show up, Melissa said, glancing at him. If that's what you want, James answered with a serious tone. But if it hurts too much, Melissa shook her head. No, it's important. By sharing the truth, we can give hope to others who are hurting. The next day, Hamilton Enterprises launched a major social media campaign featuring images from Melissa and James's wedding. The campaign's message about the true meaning of family, even acknowledging that her own family was absent, sparked widespread empathy. Her interview aired nationwide, and her new status as the wife of a corporate executive quickly became headline news, igniting conversations about what family really means. Meanwhile, criticism started pouring in about her actual family. One morning at the office, Melissa gasped when she saw an email from Vanessa. It read, Dear Melissa, I saw your news recently. I had no idea you held such a position. Why didn't you tell me? I'm sorry about that day. I really was planning to come, but I had an important meeting. Looking forward to hearing from you, Vanessa. Melissa read the email twice and then laughed quietly. On her wedding day, Vanessa had coldly said, You'll probably be divorced soon anyway. She decided not to reply. A week later, a friend called her. Melissa, you won't believe it. I heard your mother's been drifting away from her friends since coming back from Paris. Everyone's talking. I even saw your daughter on TV. Are you really a corporate executive's wife now? And is it true you skipped your own wedding? Melissa said nothing, only feeling a small satisfaction blossom inside. At the same time, Vanessa faced relentless questioning at the upscale boutique where she worked. Are you the sister of that Hamilton woman? Why didn't you go to the wedding? Gradually, customers dwindled and the store manager's glances turned cold. Changes weren't any better for her brother Brian either. The surf brand that sponsored him abruptly ended their contract, saying, We can't do business with anyone connected to Hamilton Enterprises. Barbara stopped receiving invitations to social events. Vanessa lost her job, and Brian's sponsors pulled out, leaving all three in dire straits. That evening, Melissa's phone rang. Vanessa's name showed up. Hesitantly, Melissa answered. Melissa. Vanessa's voice now lacked its usual iciness, sounding anxious. I saw you on TV recently. You're amazing, by the way. Before Vanessa could continue, Melissa interjected. You thought my wedding was a waste of time because I'd probably end up divorced, right? Well, I'm having a happy marriage. Do you need something? No, I just wanted to check on you, Vanessa managed, then fell silent and hung up. Melissa set her phone aside and gazed out the window. The San Francisco skyline was unchanged from 6 months ago, yet she was unrecognizable from her old self. A woman no longer burdened by family expectations and criticism, but a strong individual carving her own path. James wrapped his arms around her from behind. No regrets, he whispered. No, not at all. This isn't revenge, it's justice. I'm just letting the world know what they did to me. A year later, Melissa and James had moved into a grand mansion in an upscale San Francisco suburb. Standing by a window, Melissa admired the garden's blooming flowers, a reminder of the day she had her wedding without her family. The pain still lingered, but it no longer ruled her heart. James joined her by the window and wrapped an arm around her shoulder. You've grown so strong this past year, he said, kissing her cheek. Melissa smiled softly. Sometimes I still wonder how they're doing. Do you want to know? James asked quietly. Looking at him, Melissa replied, Actually, I had them investigated. James gave a small apologetic smile. For your happiness, I wanted you to know. Here are the details. He handed her some documents. They revealed that Barbara had been completely ostracized, forced to give up her luxury apartment for a small room. Vanessa had lost her high-end job and was now drifting from one temporary position to another in a modest town. Brian, drowning in debt after losing his sponsors, was living on a friend's sofa. Melissa choked on her words. Just as you intended, James said softly, his tone free of blame. They hurt you, and now they're facing the consequences. Pressing her forehead against the cold window glass, Melissa whispered, Is this what I wanted? Only you can decide, James replied, holding her hand. That afternoon, while Melissa was reading in the garden, the caretaker announced visitors. Miss Johnson and Mrs. Johnson are here to see you. Taking a steady breath, Melissa went to the living room. There stood Barbara, Vanessa, and Brian, each looking drastically different from the memories she held. Barbara's hair was now white and her posture hunched. Vanessa's once radiant beauty had faded, and Brian looked gaunt, his tan skin lacking vitality. It's been a while, Barbara managed, forcing a smile. The air of superiority had vanished, replaced by anxiety and fear. What a lovely home, Melissa said calmly, her voice firm yet gentle. Please have a seat. Would you like something to drink? No, that's fine, Vanessa replied curtly. Do you have some business here? Melissa smiled softly. I just wanted to see my daughter. Barbara's voice trailed off as she hesitated, her hands trembling. Really? Or are you curious about my new status? Sitting gracefully in a chair, her silk dress catching the light, Melissa's tone remained gentle but her eyes were steely. Honestly, sis, Brian finally admitted, I'm in trouble. We've all lost our jobs and been shunned by friends. That's unfortunate, Melissa said evenly. But what can I do? After a long pause, Barbara's voice trembled. Melissa, please help us. Friends are avoiding me. I've been cast out of society. Vanessa added, I can't get hired anywhere because they only see me as Mrs. Hamilton's sister, the one who didn't attend the wedding. Brian bowed his head. I'm drowning in debt. Every sponsor has cut me off. No one wants to do business with anyone linked to Hamilton Enterprises. Melissa took a deep breath and replied calmly, I see. So what do you want me to do? We need your influence, Barbara pleaded through tears. One word from you could change everything. Isn't it funny, Melissa said bitterly, that you once told me not to waste your time with trivial matters? Barbara covered her face with trembling hands. I'm sorry. I had no idea you'd become the wife of such a major corporate executive. Melissa stood and walked to the window, her voice quiet but resolute. If you had known. The three fell silent, and that silence spoke volumes. Do you think family is everything? Melissa asked softly. Blood ties. Barbara answered immediately. No, Melissa's voice was steady but laced with sadness. Family is the people who support me and see my worth. Not showing up at my wedding hurt deeply, but it also revealed who my real family is. Standing before them, she continued, I forgive you. Barbara and Vanessa's eyes widened and Brian looked up, though it was clear that forgiveness and rebuilding trust are two very different things. It takes time to rebuild trust, Melissa explained. Go home today. Only return when you're truly sorry and ready to be part of a real family. Vanessa managed weakly. Aren't you adults? Melissa replied calmly. Accepting the consequences of your choices is what being an adult means. Barbara and the others left in silence, their faces filled with humiliation and regret. After the door closed, Melissa stood by the window watching their car drive away. Her emotions were tangled, a bittersweet mix of revenge and the sorrow of losing what she thought was family. Soon James quietly entered. Are you okay? He asked. Melissa turned from the window and offered a small smile. Yes, it was hard but necessary. James placed his hand on her shoulder. This isn't the end. What do you mean? She asked. True strength is the power to forgive, James replied. Melissa gazed out again. Forgiveness doesn't come easily. It takes time, effort, and I need time to fully forgive. Later that evening, Melissa and James stood together, arms linked, watching the suburban San Francisco skyline. Their garden, adorned with vibrant Christmas lights, filled the cold air with the scents of cinnamon and pie. 5 years into their marriage, they now had a 3-year-old daughter, Elizabeth, with golden curls and bright blue eyes. She had Melissa's features and James's smile. In the kitchen, while making final dinner preparations, Melissa reflected on her journey. Now the vice president of Hamilton Enterprises and the founder of a charity supporting families, her work brought hope and helped heal broken relationships. Mom, when are Grandma and the others coming? Elizabeth asked in her small, sweet voice, dressed in a red velvet outfit like a little Christmas angel. Melissa gently ruffled her daughter's hair. Soon, sweetheart. Are you excited? Elizabeth nodded eagerly. Yes. Grandma always gives me presents. But is it true that you and Grandma weren't close before? Melissa paused. Children's questions often cut straight to the heart. Yes, we had our struggles, but people can change. The doorbell rang, and Elizabeth ran to answer it. Standing there was Barbara, her once haughty attitude replaced by a gentle smile. Melissa, Elizabeth, Merry Christmas, she said softly. Barbara now lived alone in a modest apartment, far removed from her former life of luxury and social clout, and she cherished the rare invitations to Melissa's charity events. Next came Brian, dressed smartly with a humble smile. Sis, Merry Christmas, he greeted. With Melissa's help, Brian had repaid his debts and now worked for a subcontractor at Hamilton Enterprises, steadily trying to mend their relationship. Finally, Vanessa arrived. Gone was the flashy persona, now she carried herself as a composed adult. Melissa, Elizabeth, it's been a while, she said. Vanessa had moved to a small town and started over as a hairdresser. Though it took time, she was learning to live humbly and reconnect with her sister. At the Christmas dinner, the table glowed warmly, though an undercurrent of tension lingered. The conversation was polite but lacked genuine warmth. Toward the meal's end, Barbara suddenly stood up. Her hands trembled slightly, yet her voice was clear. Melissa, I want to apologize. I was a terrible mother. I failed to see your worth and hurt you deeply. You've become a far better person than I ever was. You don't have to forgive me. I only want you to know that I'm proud of you." The room fell silent. James and little Elizabeth looked at Melissa. Gently, she squeezed her mother's hand. "Mom, we can't change the past, but we can shape the future. Elizabeth only has one grandmother. Let's build a new family history together." Later that night, as the house grew quiet, Melissa wrote in her diary, "The day of my wedding when my family didn't come was one of the most painful moments of my life. But without that day, I wouldn't have discovered my own strength or learned the true meaning of family. I've learned that forgiveness fills the heart far more than revenge ever could. And my worth isn't defined by others." Gazing at the sunset through the window, Melissa whispered, "My family may have skipped my wedding, but in the end we all managed to find new bonds."